It's final exam season, and in the last video, I shared with you the 5 steps in how to make an anti-cram final exam plan. Today, I want to drill down into step number 3, which is all about organizing your study resources. Today, we're going to look at about 5 different kinds of study resources that you will want to go back through all of your stuff, all of your papers, all of your things from the class and collect. Then we're going to look at how do you make those things quizable? What is quizability exactly, and why is it important? And how can you use those study resources to quiz yourself? Ready? Let's dig in. Okay, students and teachers, what kinds of resources should you organize when you're getting ready for your final exams? Here are several kinds. The first are your notes. Now, truly highly advanced students will know how to make their notes quizable. In a moment, we'll talk about what quizability is. Whether or not your notes are quizable, you will want to make sure that you have good access to them and that they're all in the same place. Some students I know put notes in lots of different places. Some students I know also don't actually title their notes so that they know what is the topic that we're learning about today. If that is you, it would be really useful to go back, find your notes, label them, maybe even tear some of them out, put them in the right order, staple them into one big packet so that you have all of your notes in one place. That can be very helpful when you're preparing for final exams. The next thing you might want is your homework assignments. Now, many students don't have homework assignments that are quizable. We're going to come back and look at that in a moment. For now, just know that homework assignments can be very helpful for you if you actually write them out in a very specific kind of a way. Stay tuned to hear what that is. Next, quizzes and tests. Many teachers don't allow students to keep old quizzes and tests, but if your teacher allows you to, please keep them in one place. And also teachers, this is my, I implore you, please allow students to have their tests and quizzes with them. I know that there are concerns about people cheating in the future and sharing tests and quizzes with each other. I get that, but it is so useful for final exams for students to have access to the old things you've given them that show them what is important. So if it's possible, please let students have these. Many teachers make study guides for students during all of the tests that go through the semester. And so saving these can really help you get ready for final exams. Finally, any study tools that you made throughout the semester. Maybe you made flashcards. Maybe you made my favorite thing, which is a T-chart, which is simply a line down the middle of the page and questions on one side and answers on the other. When I was a student, I liked to write really small so I could cram a lot of information on one piece of paper. There are all kinds of study tools that you can make. If you're curious about that, I recommend you go take my course, The Anti-Boring Approach to Powerful Studying, because I walk you through all kinds of different ways that you can manipulate the things that you are learning in class and create a study tool that helps you memorize things. For now, though, just know that if it's a few weeks before finals, these are the things you're going to want to go through for each of your classes and make sure that you have all of them in one place. Now, I've been using this word quizable. So let's look at what that means. What makes a study resource quizable? The first thing is that you have easy access to questions and answers on the same page or near each other, like maybe questions on the front, answers on the back, but they are near each other. You have both of them. You can then also look at a question without immediately seeing the answer. That's why it can be really useful to have questions and answers on, front versus back, or with the T-chart, one side of the line versus the other side of the line, because then you can fold the piece of paper. There are even lots of creative ways of even folding paper. You can probably discover some of your own students folding paper in fun ways to quiz yourself. Do you know, I don't have one with me, but that way of doing those things. Do you know what I mean? Even that is a great Quizable resource. Finally, this last one is a bonus. Although it's not necessary, I like to be able to move my body while holding and working with my Quizable resource. So for example, I used to be an actress and I had lots of lines I had to memorize. And so I would go walking with my script, and my script would be folded in certain ways so that I could see only what's the line that the other character said before my line. And then I would have to have my line memorized, right? So I would read the line that came before, but I wouldn't actually see what my line was. So I'd have to pull it out of my head. And then I could flip the paper because of the fold and then see what my line was. You can even, by the way, actresses and actors out there, you could even do a T-chart method with the line that comes before yours and then your line right next to you. But the most important thing here is I would go on a long walk with my Quizable resource with me. And there's something about moving the body and being able to see what you know and what you don't know, and then to correct yourself. That is a really great way to study. All right. Why, though, is it so important to be Quizable with our study resources? The reason, well, there are several reasons. The first one here is that retrieval is the most effective study method. That's what all the brain science shows us. Now, if you don't know what retrieval is, basically it means testing yourself. But go to gretchenwagner.com/study, and there's a whole chart that will help you understand retrieval practice a little bit better there. The next thing is that when we put in a little effort, when we have productive struggle, not unproductive struggle when we're overwhelmed and freaked out, but productive struggle, when we've known how to break down the little things into tiny parts and then we work on testing ourselves about those tiny little parts, that creates a little effort. But that effort ends up creating neural pathways in our brain that are bigger and wider and easier to access for that information. Effort is so necessary for learning. There's another thing down here, the illusion of knowing. When we see the answer right next to the question, we have no way of knowing if we actually know it. We feel like we know it. Do you ever have that experience? You look at you review your notes and you're like, oh yeah, this is familiar. I remember the teacher saying that. Yeah, I got this. I'm ready for the test. Then you get to the test and you can't recognize any of the information from the test questions. That's because you had the illusion of knowing. When you looked over your notes or reread your textbook, you felt confident, but you hadn't actually proven to yourself whether you know it or not. So that's why Quizable study tools help us. They help us prove what we know and what we don't know. And then they also help us check our understanding. A good Quizable study tool actually has the answers somewhere there so that we can test ourselves, and then we can grade ourselves to see what we know and what we don't know. When I was a kid, I loved to grade myself. I loved to get out a red pen even and pretend that I was a teacher. I don't know how many teachers still use red pens, but that was a thing back in the 80s. Okay, so let's look back at this whiteboard again. I told you we'd come back to this. Homework assignments and even some quizzes are often not set up in Quizable ways. Students, are you often asked to answer like questions 1 through 3 on page 48, for example? And then when you do that, you write number 1, number 2, number 3. You write a one-word or one-phrase answer for each of them, and you call it a day. If you do that, it's understandable. Nobody's ever taught you otherwise. Although teachers, I would like to recommend that you teach students otherwise. Put a little thing, once you put number 1, put what the topic is. Maybe you're answering right now the 5 different types of blah, blah, blah. If you write that, 5 different types of blah, 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 and then underneath it or next to it, you write what the 5 things are, suddenly you have a Quizable study tool. Suddenly that homework assignment goes from being something that actually is not very useful to you later on for finals to something that might be incredibly useful to you for finals, because then you can go through, ask yourself the question, see if you know the answers. If you had it wrong when you did the homework assignment, hopefully you corrected it so the right answer is there. And then it's a quizzable study tool. So students, I highly recommend you go through, collect, organize your resources. If you have stuff in lots of different places, you've been stuffing random papers in places, understandable, I get it. But take a few hours to go through each of your classes. Make sure you have the things that you need to help you study for finals, the Quizable resources, and then go back and watch, or if you haven't watched it, watch it for the first time, the 5 different steps in making an anti-cram plan, because once you've organized your resources, then you can make a plan for how you're going to use those resources to prepare for your final exams. Good luck with that, students. Teachers, hang real tight because I'm coming to you with a tip in a moment. But first, I want to ask everyone to please, please, please like and subscribe and do all the things you know to do to keep your favorite anti-boring study skills YouTuber in business. And also, if you would like to follow up and actually have a conversation with me, I'm available for free every month on Zoom. Go to gretchenwegner.com/live to find me, or /study to download the chart of my 3-step study cycle with lots of different suggestions for creative and anti-boring ways to study in that chart. Please go grab yourself one of those. And educators, if you're thinking you might like to create a little side business for yourself, or maybe even a full-time business as an academic life coach, ADHD coach, executive function coach, I have a free course for you to let you know what it's like and to help you start thinking about how to get your own business set up. Go to gretchenwegner.com/crash course for that. Where'd my teacher one go? Where'd my teacher board go? Teachers, here is your tip. And this goes for anyone who actually is an academic coach or tutor working with students after school one-to-one, or if you are a classroom teacher. Helping students organize their study tools with the test in mind all semester long is something I highly recommend that you do. When I was a student, a lot of my teachers had requirements for how to set up my binders, and every teacher had a different requirement, and it was kind of like, oh my God, I got to remember all of this. It was hard to do. And that's not necessarily bad for you to have your requirements for how to organize, but it helps students to understand why, what the benefit is to them to keep these things. And many students just think they're doing it for the grade. They're doing it because the teacher asked them to do, and not because there's actually a real pedagogical reason why you should keep all of your tests and quizzes in one place. You should write the correct answers down on your tests. When you're doing your homework, you should write the question as well as the answer, and you should do it in a quizzable way. If teachers helped students understand this is why we're organizing things this way, and then actually help students practice using their Quizable study tools to prepare for tests, I think students would do a better job of keeping all of their things organized. So I would love, teachers, to see you actually helping students understand this. And one of the tips for helping students understand how to organize their study tools with the test in mind is to have moments, meta moments, where you just kind of pause and say, hey, what are we doing right now? If I'm asking you to write something, how can you write it in a quizzable way? Why would you want to write it in a quizzable way? And how can you use this to study later on tonight? Asking them these questions over and over again helps them start seeing the connections between what and how you're teaching them and how they, the students, can teach themselves. It would be a huge gift you could give students. Please, if you have any questions about any of this, I love to help you all live. So please just come to my office hours, gretchenwegner.com/live, and listen in quietly behind the scenes if you want, or ask me a question about how you can do some of this more specifically in your classroom. I hope to see you there.